This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
And welcome. Good morning, good afternoon. You're here live with Dr. Jeff Werber, your host for the next 30 minutes here on Pet Life Radio's Ask the Vets with Dr. Jeff. Here for you, here for your pets, here to answer questions, here or whatever you want to talk about. I'm always prepared about something, but you know what? You can change my mind in a heartbeat. Just get a hold of me and we can talk about something you'd like to hear. Easiest way to get a hold of me, though it's not my favorite, but easiest way is give us a call. 877-385-8882. Once again, 877, toll free, 385-8882. Better way is to join us here live on Google Hangouts. Everything is laid out for you. It's so easy. Just go to PetLifeRadio.com, click on shows, scroll down to Ask the Vets with Dr. Jeff. And what you can do is you can see there's a link left for you there, and go ahead and just click on the link and it will put you in touch with us directly. And you can see us live. You can join us, have your pet on your lap, whatever. And we can talk anything you want. You can also send me a quick email to drjeff, Dr. Jeff at PetLifeRadio.com. Our producer, Mark Winter, will send it immediately to me, and we can talk that way as well. If you have any questions, that's the best way to do it. So hope you are all enjoying this Sunday here in LA. It is a magnificent Sunday. Actually, today they're expecting high 70s. Tomorrow, already in the low 80s, which has been amazing since we've had so much rain and snow. I was up in Mammoth a couple of weeks ago, and there was so much snow. The banks by the roads were 15 feet high. It was just unbelievable. And they got another 7 inches last week. This makes me very happy, as right now they plan to be open through, at least they already made the announcement, through the 4th of July. Can you imagine? You can be, sitting here in the sun one day, and then the next day you're up skiing or snowboarding in one of the premier locations in the U.S. More snow than anywhere in the U.S. right now. Mammoth Mountain, California, and it is Mammoth Mountain. It's just great. And we predict it's going to be open even later than July 4th. So that's really cool. So anyway, as you know, because I like to just kind of let you know what's going on, how do we stay current? So there are a lot of news briefs or a lot of things in that we can, kind of stay on top of. I just came back from a couple of conferences. We were at the Western Vet Conference. Then I went to the Global Pet Expo, and that's really cool. There are a couple of us, the veterinarians, that usually frequent the pet shows as well as the vet shows. So it's a good chance to bump into some of my colleagues, my friend Ernie Ward, Marty Becker, all usually there. We all kind of wear two hats in the industry. We work with the pet companies as well as the vet companies. So it's kind of cool. And of course, I was there, with Mark Winter, our producer, Pet Life Radio. So it's a huge show in Orlando at the convention center. And it's always a really happening place. So one thing I read that really struck me, because this is something that I've noticed before. I have 5. I had 6. I had to, put one of my cat's Tux to sleep this past year, but 5 cats. And, you think, how come you call your dog, right? You say their name. I say, Tommy, come here. And he's even heading over to me before I say, come here. And yet cats, do they even recognize their names? I mean, what is it? They are so aloof. And the question is, yes, they do. They've done a number of studies, and cats do recognize their names. They just don't respond the way a dog does it. You call a dog's name, depends on your tone. He's either running the other way, so, what did I do now? Or they're going to come towards you because you say, hey, again, it's all about tone. They don't always recognize the words, but they certainly recognize the tone of our voice. You can say, you're a good dog, and they're going to be cowering. You say, oh, you're the dumbest dog in the whole world. And they're going to still come over to you, wagging their tail. Oh, okay, good. Where's my treat? But cats recognize their names. And this is possibly why dogs actually come, probably because of training and what we call selective breeding. But think about it. When puppies, and this is what we teach people to do, is when you want a dog to start recognizing their name, you take a little teeny treat and you say their name, give them the treat. Say their name, give them the treat. Say their name, give them the treat. Say their name. Don't give them the treat this time. Maybe not the next time. But then the 2 times after that, give them a treat again. And each time you're getting this. So what's going to happen is, ultimately, when they hear their name, knowing that the treat's coming, operant conditioning, it's not always going to come. Always, I usually tell people to do is also couple it with, oh, you're such a good boy, such a good girl, good dog. And then so pretty soon the pat in the head, the good dog, good girl, right? Good boy, that replaces the treat. You don't even have to give a treat anymore. And they're going to start coming to you for the affection. So, but we don't do that necessarily with cats. And cats don't always come when they're called. because they say, what do you want from me now? Leave me alone. I'm resting. I'm playing. I'm doing my thing. You just don't bother me. That's a cat. But as far as name recognition, they do. And I see it. I do see it with my cats because I do give my cats a lot of affection when I call them and call their names. I can walk in the kitchen. One of my I have a huge cat named Bugsy. I go, hey, Bugs, come here, Bugsy. And he comes right over, jumps up on the counter and is just, starting to rub his face into my, my arm. And he wants my hand. He wants to be petted. So cats are like that too. This is also interesting that parents of like baby bunnies and other small animals, all right, that seem to be abandoned are probably nearby. They're either looking for food, they're just doing their own thing for the day. So the important thing is when you see little animals kind of parading around on their own, don't immediately assume they've been abandoned. And because most likely studies show that mom is close by. So if you try to take them and do what you do, take them to the vet, whatever, their chances of survival are less than if they stay with mom. So it is recommended leave them alone. Now, if you want to keep an eye on things, you want to go back, a few hours later, or a day later and watch and see if they're still running around loose, that's okay. But just know that chances are mom is nearby and you want to leave them alone. And because it just enhances their chances of survival if they're with mother. So that's something to know. Now, this is, we always talk about the food thing and recalls, and there is another recall I wanted to tell you about. But this is interesting. A growing number of pet owners, right, maybe many of you actually, are rejecting packaged dried kibbles in favor of some of these commercially made or homemade fresh foods, including raw meats, believing that they are more nutritious than what you've been feeding in the bags and the name brands. Well, the truth of the matter is that, another reason I hear all the time is because they feel that the raw meat mimics the ancestral diets, what their ancestors ate in the wild. It's true. It does mimic that. But guess what? That may be fine. The food may be what the animals ate in the wild, their ancestors, how many hundreds or thousands of years ago. But guess what? Their intestinal tracts and their flora, the gut flora, is not the same anymore because of domestication. So don't kid yourselves in thinking that this is the way they should be fed. But you have to keep in mind that the established pet food companies, right, you have recipes based on literally years and years of science. And what the FDA recommends is that I wouldn't say recommendation, it's more of a precautionary statement that these raw diets, may be contaminated with dangerous bacteria, which we know because 2 weeks, maybe if not every week, at least every other week, we see, and I talk about some FDA recalls because of problems like this. And also some of the new boutique foods, since they've been gaining more popularity, as we've talked about before here on the show, that we are seeing more cases of canine dilated cardiomyopathy. And we don't know the link. In fact, I just talked to a good colleague of mine, Dr. Ned Mosier, who is a board-certified veterinary nutritionist. No one's still really been able to come up with the hard facts, the link. But all we know is statistically, we are seeing more and more of this problem of cardiomyopathy, which is something we never saw in dogs before, because with the right amino acids, cysteine and methionine, sulfur-based amino acids, they can make their own taurine. The question is why? What is going on with some of these new diets that the body is not doing? Now, cats, we know, cannot make their own taurine, so they are supplemented with taurine in their diets. So all good cat food diets contain taurine, which comes from real meat. That's why cats are, for one thing, they are obligate carnivores. They have to get some meat in their diet because of the taurine. And in many commercial foods, actually more taurine is even added. And since that discovery has been made, we're not seeing so many cases of dilated cardiomyopathy. But now we're seeing it in dogs. We never used to see it in dogs. So something is going on. We don't know what it is. Maybe it's the grain-free. Maybe it's the type of grain. Maybe there's something in legumes, which is often for protein source, the grains are being replaced by legumes that they have. Though they have it, it's interesting. They test the cysteine and methionine. It's there. But for some reason, the dogs can't use it to make their own taurine. So anyway, just keep that in mind. Now, if you live in Florida, there is something called a buffo toad or buffo toad, also called a cane toad. Guess what? They are extremely toxic, even deadly. There was a story out of Tampa that a dog, young, healthy dog, began seizing within minutes after picking up a buffo toad into its mouth, or a buffo toad, and died shortly thereafter. And so basically, just keep in mind that they emit a toxin that is deadly to dogs and cats. So if you live where these toads are and you have inquisitive pets, my recommendation is keep them away from those toads. Now, also, one thing to remember that heartworm infection, speaking of Florida, in many parts of the country, usually it's the southeast and southwest where it's humid, Texas, Louisiana, the Gulf Coast, Florida, the heartworm, mosquitoes year-round. If mosquitoes are year-round, heartworm is year-round. So don't kid yourself into thinking that, just because they're not as bad or whatever, we should stop heartworm prevention. Heartworm prevention is easy. It's inexpensive. It comes in chewables. It comes in injectables. It comes in topicals to prevent heartworm. So my recommendation is have your pets tested at least once a year is fine. Stay on the medication year round. Even here in LA, it's interesting. There was a case that I had actually one of the first cases of heartworm disease in a dog that never left Los Angeles. We never used to have mosquitoes. And this particular dog lived near one of the largest cemeteries called Forest Lawn. So when the Heartworm Society came out to evaluate the dog and the environment, and they saw how close they lived to the cemetery, they went up to the cemetery and they picked up some headstones. And not surprisingly, there were thousands and thousands of mosquito larvae. Okay. What's the link? Well, because they keep those greens, the grass is so lush and green, they are watered all the time. And we have warm weather. So even though we are typically don't have humid climates here in California, around when you have a lot of moisture and the heat, it does get moist. So we get more humidity, and that was a breeding ground. They identified a mosquito that is, I think it was called Culex or Culicoides quincofasciatus. Big name. You don't have to remember it. But anyway, it is a year-round mosquito here in California, in Southern California. And therefore, even though typically we never really had to treat against heartworm disease, now we do. And as I tell my local clients, if you are sitting outside on an evening and you're just enjoying a little quiet time and reading or whatever, playing with your pets, and you see mosquitoes, it's time to test and start heartworm prevention. A couple more things we're going to go through, and then we're going to break for a quick word from our sponsors. So there's a new law in Virginia which makes animal abuse a felony and punishable by 5 years in prison and a $2,500 fine. It's about time. And Indiana is now in the process of trying to pass a similar law, being animal abuse a felony. I'm sure you've heard the story about this father-son who killed a mama bear and her cubs for fun, just for sport, and they got basically a slap on the wrist. Of course, many of us would have preferred something way more aggressive than that, maybe even a lot more jail time. But how crazy, a couple of months or something, they had to serve 3 months in prison. That's nuts. The sleeping, hibernating bear, mama bear and her cubs, the cubs were screaming. They were searching. It was interesting what these idiots didn't know, that they were actually had cameras on the bear and her cubs because they were studying hibernation and habits. And these guys thought, they're home free. And they literally just murdered them. So it's a good thing I wasn't around with my hunting gun. So anyway, I'm just joking. I don't own a hunting gun, but still, I would have used it on them, not the bear. As I said, recall Purina, Nestle Purina issue a recall. Now, in all fairness, this is not about bacteria and raw diet. Their Muse chicken and gravy, wet food, canned food, little 3-ounce cans. They found pieces of rubber. What are pieces of rubber in your cat's canned food? So something must have broken the chain and spitting out these little rubber pieces. And the concern was that the cat eating it might choke on the rubber. So anyway, just keep in mind. Now, this is found in Norway, but this can happen anywhere. A tick-borne virus in raw milk, which can affect people who drink the raw milk. And it's called tick-borne encephalitis, discovered in Norway. And it's just a warning. It's just something just to talk about, that really we need to be very careful about drinking unpasteurized or partially pasteurized dairy products or eating them dairy products because of this. In fact, the AVMA has a statement that they warn against any non-pasteurized dairy products for human consumption. And it's because I'm just going to read you a list. It's a short list, maybe not so short. It's a short list of these are the different bacteria that are found in potentially dairy products that are not pasteurized. Okay, brucellosis, Campylobacter, Coxiella, Cryptosporidia, Listeria, Salmonella, tuberculosis, and E. coli. Pretty scary, huh? So anyway, bottom line. If now people are saying, you know what, I'm going vegan after hearing this. But if you're going to have dairy products, you got to just make sure it's pasteurized. Yes, you want to be natural. That's great. Unfortunately, your gut is not able to handle all these bacteria. So be smart and drink and eat pasteurized products. And don't go away. We'll be right back after these shorter messages.
We'll be right back right after these messages. Stay tuned.
Does your dog itch, scratch, stink, or shed like crazy? Come to Dynovite for help.
Order a 90-day supply of Dynovite.
Dynovite for life.
Pick up 2 tubes of Doggo Suds.
Get the 3rd tube free.
Peppermint, tea tree, lavender, Doggo Sud shampoo.
Made with all-natural coconut, jojoba, aloe. Great for healthy skin and soft, shiny coats.
But no itchy, harsh chemicals.
Lather up, rinse away.
Try Doggo Suds. Buy 2, get 1 free.
At Dynovite.com.
DINOVITE.com.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
And welcome back. We're live with Dr. Jeff here on Pet Life Radio's Ask the Vets with Dr. Jeff. And I'm going to ask you a question. So have you ever, like kind of out of the blue, woken up, taken a look at your dog, and you see a big swelling under his eye? And the reason I'm talking about it is I had 3 cases in the last week or week and a half of this particular problem. And, immediately people are worried about, oh my God, did he get bitten by a bug? Is it a bee bite? Is it a spider bite? Is the right here under the eye, right by the upper cheek, you have a big swelling. And I'm actually working with, we have an extern, she's doing a preceptorship, finished veterinary school at Auburn. Her name is Sarah. She is, all the Auburn students, they finish all their classwork, and then the last 2 months before their degree, they either work at one place or many places. They set them up. She's working with me for 2 months. She already passed her California board. She actually wants to practice in California. So we had, a couple of cases like this, and I asked, what's going on? And, and right away they're thinking about the same things that most people think. And this is classic. I made the diagnosis just with the dog walking in the door. Didn't have to touch it. It's like the horses versus the zebra. The most obvious thing. Always go for the most obvious thing. I always teach this to young veterinarians. Go for the most obvious. If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So these things have such a characteristic location. And when you see it, I would say 95 or maybe even higher % of the time, we're talking about a carnasial root abscess. The carnasial tooth is the upper 4th premolar. And it is the one, it's probably one of the first ones that often gets missed when you're brushing. It happens to be a tooth where the salivary ducts enter the mouth right over. So they collect a lot of tartar. The tartar basically starts as the plaque, which is the film left over from eating. Obviously, those teeth are used most often for eating because they are chewing teeth. They're the part what we call the chewing teeth, the premolars and molars. And so therefore, they have the most film on them. Now you add the saliva and time because they're not being brushed, and this saliva hardens the plaque, and plaque becomes calculus or tartar. And before you know it, you have that thick stuff literally hanging right on the tooth. With poor dental care, not enough professional dental care, not brushing well enough, if at all. And all of a sudden, the bacteria, the infection goes up in the mouth, goes in, starts loosening the attachment of the tooth into the bone, and we have what's called an apical root abscess. And on dental x-ray, I'm sure you've had x-rays in your mouth. Your dog should have x-rays, and cats should have x-rays in their mouths as well when you go in for routine cleanings, and at least once a year, and you're going to see this abscess. So it's so weird. We say these things, bad things happen in threes. Well, this actually happened in 3. So there are a number of, well, I wouldn't say a large number. There are basically 2 choices in my book when you have this abscess. One is root canal, which many general practice veterinarians don't do. Fortunately, there are veterinary dentists now. These are veterinarians. After completion of veterinary school, they go on to do a residency in dentistry, and they become board certified as veterinary dentists. And either the American Veterinary Dental College or the American College of Veterinary Dentistry. There are 2 organizations out there that certify dentists or veterinarians that are going to be practicing as dentists. So root canal, but the thing with the root canal, just so you know, of a carnasial tooth, since the carnasial tooth is a 3-rooted tooth, and they all communicate, the roots. So that means if you have to do the root canal, you got to do all 3 roots. So it is not easy. It is costly, but that is an option. Costly, I would say it could be as much as, I don't know, depending. In our area, it might be $1,500 to $2,000 doing the root canal on that tooth. If you get it early, it's possible you can do like what we call a pulpotomy, still a little expensive. Most people, I would tell you, at least most of my clients will usually opt just to remove the tooth. And that is a bit of a challenge, but it is now, with the modern advances in veterinary dentistry, because of dentistry as a specialty, we're learning ways to actually remove a tooth fairly easily. We do a gum flap. We shave away some of the bone surrounding the tooth on the lateral aspect. We split the tooth into two, sometimes even to three. So then you end up just taking each root out separately, makes it a lot easier. And what I then do is I will put a drain. So obviously you have direct communication from the top of that root, that is the infected root or roots, right into that spot, which is what happens is the reason why that swelling erupts just under the eye is that the infection follows the path of least resistance. It can't go down through the hard tooth, but what it does is it can travel upward and it shoots right up under the eye, creates a huge abscess right under the eye. And it's interesting is that, and I show this to people, sometimes I can gently put pressure on the abscess with the lip pull back, and you can see the pus literally coming out through the bone, the skin and the gums around the tooth. It's like really, it's crazy. So anyway, that is something that it's not as uncommon as you think. Actually, if anything, it's fairly common. So just know that when you have it, don't panic. It's probably a root abscess. The tooth, as I said, talk to your veterinarian. The options are now. There are many veterinarians out there that are general practice veterinarians that did take extra courses in teeth and can do root canals. And if that's the case, then that might be an option for you. As I said, many of my clients just opt because of the expense. And it happens more likely than older dogs. They're eating softer food. All you have to do is they still have their other side of the mouth. They still have other teeth that they can use to chew. And let's face it, how many of you have had dogs that have over the years have had to pull almost every tooth because of some sort of either infection, gum disease, gingivitis, periodontal disease, loosened teeth? They pull them anyway, and the dogs do just fine. I had a cat, my old Oriental Shorthair. His name was Sushi, appropriate name for an Oriental Shorthair. And he, by the time we had to finally put him to sleep at 17, or maybe he was even 18, I think he had 2 teeth left in his mouth. And he was doing just fine, eating just fine. But anyway, see your doctor, see your veterinarian. If you are interested, and if your veterinarian doesn't do root canals, maybe ask for a referral, either to a veterinary specialist, a dental specialist, or even a nearby veterinary hospital. Veterinary university teaching hospital. They will most likely be able to do it there, or pull the tooth, but make sure that they flush. As I said, put a drain in for about 3 or 4 days. Let these start antibiotics. Typically, one of the antibiotics that's good for oral infections, like a Clavamox or a clindamycin. And then after a couple of days, pull the drain. It heals beautifully. These dogs and cat, I usually see dogs do just fine. So just keep in mind. So don't panic. Once again, it's one of those things. It's almost like a hot spot in the sense that you go out, your dog is fine, and you come back 3 hours later, and there's a huge moist lesion somewhere on his body, and you panic, and you say, I wasn't there when I left. What happened? And we call it a hot spot or a moist lesion, a moist dermatitis. And again, many reasons over the years why this happens, but it does. It's a wicked, wicked infection. So that's the same thing with these abscesses. They seem to pop up out of nowhere, and right away you're panicked. And just understand that it's probably a root abscess, easily managed, not necessarily so cheaply managed, but easily managed. And it's, as I said, good cleaning. And this brings me to the original thing is dental care at home is so important. Our pets' teeth are often neglected. Get into a habit, and you can make it fun. You can make it enjoyable for the dog or the cat. Cats are admittedly a little bit tougher. And so the 2 things I want to guard against. Number 1, make sure that you get your dogs on a home oral regimen of dental care. And don't be fooled by these anesthesia-free, non-anesthetic dental places, usually at a grooming facility, even if there's a veterinarian there. The truth of the matter is, and any vet dentist will tell you, there are studies out there to prove that there's no way, even if you have the best dog in the world, a cat, forget about it, impossible, to do the deep root cleaning, to get up above the gums, deep into those sulci, into those pockets, clean off all the debris. All right. You can't do that in an awake dog, period. So you can get the surface of the teeth clean maybe pretty well. And so you lift up the gum, you see the teeth, they look clean, but what's going on under the gums, you're not seeing. And trust me, they're not clean. So speak to your veterinarian and get your pets on a regular regimen of dental care and start teaching your dogs to like having their teeth brushed. Easier said than done, I know, but no, it can be done. And my dogs are totally receptive. All right. Anyway, that's it. We have all we have for today. If you have any questions or any subjects that you guys want to hear about, talk about, learn more about, and don't worry, even if it's something, trust me, if you think your pet is going through something, I guarantee there are many listeners out there going through the same thing. So don't think that yours is such a unique problem and you're embarrassed to talk about it or to tell me about it. Go ahead, give us a call. Send me a note to Dr. Jeff at PetLifeRadio.com. And you can always call us here on the show Sunday mornings, 9 in the West, noon in the East, and anywhere in between, Mountain and Central Time. And at 877-385-8882. Or every week, there's going to be a Google Hangouts link left for you here on Ask the Vets with Dr. Jeff on Pet Life Radio. And join us. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to see you. And hopefully we can enhance the health care you provide to your pets. Have a great week, everybody. See you next week.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.